Yep. Right, so today's video is about elbow pain and swinging clubs. Lots of people start swinging clubs because they've seen videos and they want to do the same thing that we've been doing, and they end up with elbow pain. I've also had the same problem. It's mainly because we tend to use the clubs the same way that we use weights in the gym. Clubs are not meant to be forced. You have to guide them into position, and they have to be the effort required to move the club should be very minimal. It should be more like a dance rather than a struggle. So the movements are planned and you have to flow with the club. That's what makes the difference. So for example, the main things to remember, the club needs to be the right weight for you. Usually you don't need to go above 3.5 kilos. So if it's men, I would like you to start between 2.5 and 3.5 kilos, and if it's women, I would like you to go from 1.5 to 2.5 kilos. I'll not talk about the length right now because that's also an important factor, but you start off with 1.5 to 2.5 for women and 2.5 to 3.5 for men, depending on how used to you are in physical training. So that's with the weight. Now the way you move it, the other next thing you need to learn is the guard position. At the guard position, you've got the elbow at 90 degrees, your shoulder is packed, and your arm is held close to your body. You don't hold it off in front like that, and you don't hold your elbow crooked like this. That's about the guard position. So this is the guard position. You need to learn to hold the guard position properly. Now the next thing that you need to learn is the midpoint. Now this is the midpoint. This is the midpoint. Now you need to get used to this. Now if you look at my elbow, it's pointing straight up to the sky. My arm is close to my ear, and it's loose. I'm not forcing it. So I talked about the guard position, and I talked about the midpoint. The midpoint will have your hand right at your collar, at the collar that you are wearing. So that's your guard and the midpoint. Now the trick is to get from the guard to the midpoint without using too much force. Now in the beginning, I'll show you how people normally do it. This is how they do it. They'll hold it stiff like this. The elbow is held stiff like this. They don't let the elbow drop down to the midpoint. So unless you loosen up the elbow and you drop your wrist down to the midpoint where it gets to the collar, you're not going to do it properly. You're going to have elbow pains constantly, and you won't get the full benefit of the exercise. So you get from the guard position, which is at 90 degrees, and the wrist is at 90 degrees. The club is vertically stacked. You don't need to use a lot of effort to hold it here. And from here, you're going to send it over your shoulder, clear your head, clear your face, and then drop it down to the midpoint. And from here, you pull it back forward into the guard position again. But instead of doing this, people will do this. They're rotating it over their heads. The elbow never bends. The elbow stays stiff, and they're using muscle force throughout and bringing it forward again. This is one of the main reasons why they get elbow pain. The next reason is you require minimum effort when you're holding it straight up, like with a club vertical. Now if you start to lose grip and it starts to tilt, the force required to hold it becomes excessive, and this is when you start torquing your wrist in order to keep it straight. Now this movement, when you have to torque it back into place, that movement is what causes most of your elbow strains. Now if you torque it outwards like this, you're going to end up with a tennis elbow. If you torque it repeatedly inwards, you're going to end up with a golfer's elbow. But the golfer's elbow is not very common because most of us already have strong flexors. None of us have decent extensors of the wrist. So that's why most of you end up with tennis elbow when you're playing with the clubs. So lesson to be learnt there is to try and hold it at a vertical position, and once you start to lose the struggle, don't try and force it back up. You let it drop, and then you bring it back up with minimal effort. So that was about not torquing your wrist when you want to hold it in position. For example, I start losing balance and it goes this way. Instead of torquing it back up, I can move my wrist under where the club is, and then now bring it back into position. So it's pretty much like balancing. This is the principle you need to get. It's not force, it's balance, right? So now suppose there's no way I can apply force to it when it loses balance, or when I'm doing this. All I'm doing is changing the position of my hand under the center of gravity of the club so that it stays as vertical as possible. This is one way to save your elbow. Now the other thing that you need to remember, when you're starting off, you haven't developed enough musculature to protect your joints. So the way you lift the club also makes an impact. Now if the club is hanging down there, now you want to get it up. If you start torquing it this way, you are guaranteed to get a tennis elbow. Instead, you need to learn ways to get your club up from the bottom to the guard position. So you've got this option, which is a movement on its own. So you're down here, you take it to the opposite side, bring it behind you, hit the midpoint like I told you earlier, and then pull it forward. So this gets you effortlessly to the guard position. This is one option. The other option is to let it hang there and then twist your elbow forwards and upwards and let it hang and get behind you, and then slide it up on your shoulder. Now these two methods are the safest ways to get a club up to the guard position. So I'll do that once more. One is on the outside and then slide it down your shoulder, and the other one is on the outside and then slide it down your shoulder. So these tips hopefully should help you avoid elbow pain. Last thing that I need to say, keep the reps low in the beginning and do more sets. So you do 10 or 15 reps and you stop. You take 5 or 10 minutes of break, and then you come back and do another set, and do 3 or 4 sets maximum. So I'm asking you to do 30 to 50 reps or 50 to 60 reps maximum in the beginning. And once you get stronger, once you learn how to wield the club without much effort, by using balance and by using technique rather than force, then your strength starts to grow and your ligaments start to get stronger and your joints starts to get better, and that's when you can start putting load. It's nice that you are interested in clubs and that you're starting off doing a lot of volume, but if you hurt yourself and you get put off clubs, then all that enthusiasm has gone to waste. So do it sensibly, and if you've got doubts, just post in the comments and we'll try and fix those problems too. Thanks.